Jake MacDonald, Chapter 10, Segment 4 Outline. Decision-making is the cognitive process of assessing information to select a course of action among several alternatives. Decisions are made with the help of judgment, or the cognitive process of forming an opinion or making an evaluation by comparing possible actions. Judgment is affected by bias, context, explanation, and reaction time. For example, essay judgments are affected by several biases such as penmanship, vocabulary, and gender of the writer. Therefore, blind grading is the only way to eliminate bias in judgment. Two mistakes can be made in a judgment. One is a miss, which is where the subject fails to detect a signal that is present, or a false alarm, where the subject mistakenly reports a stimulus that is not present. Even random and unrelated information can induce bias. The anchoring effect is the tendency to rely too heavily on an initial piece of information when making a judgment. Individuals often make the wrong decision despite being clearly informed of the parameters. The Monty Hall problem is an example of this. This is an example in which someone fails to properly estimate the probability of an outcome after being given additional information. Our memory is easily manipulated by biases. A hindsight bias is the tendency to misremember our previous views to fit our current knowledge or beliefs. Confirmation bias is the tendency to remember events that fit our preconceptions and to dismiss or forget events that do not. Belief persistence is the tendency to hold on to a belief even in the face of contradictory evidence. Judgments are also easily influenced by framing effects, or a cognitive bias that occurs when the way information is presented makes a significant difference in what people will decide. Judgments may be biased by loss averse, or the characteristic of being very reluctant to do anything that might lead to loss. Casinos and other forms of gambling take advantage of gambler's fallacy. Gambler's fallacy is the belief that the outcome of random events up to this point will affect the probability of future random events. Problem solving involves algorithms, heuristics, and representations. For example, the Tower of Hanoi problem is the problem in which you transfer a series of different sized disks from one spindle to another following a specific set of rules. All problems share at least three characteristics. One is the initial state, the situation at the beginning of the problem. Two, the goal state, which is the desired outcome of the problem. And three are constraints, which are rules that govern how you can get from the initial state to the goal state. An algorithm is a specific set of rules that will always solve a particular problem. A heuristic is a relatively easy to follow set of rules that often, but not always, solves the problem. An availability heuristic is the tendency to rely on how readily an event comes to mind in judging its likelihood in the future. Another problem-solving strategy is working backward, in which you start with the desired outcome and reverse the steps needed to get there. Insight is the sudden understanding of a problem that leads to solution without resulting to trial and error. Choice blindness is the tendency of people to not notice when they have made a choice between two things and they are subsequently told that they had made the opposite choice.